Zan missed a few days of school. Den was the only one to catch anything from him, but Daddy was watching us all, and Den lost only a day. The rest of us were all right, as far as Strep was concerned. What Zan and Kate said shouldn't have made any difference. I should have thrown it away, forgotten it, or I should have asked Daddy when we were out in the lab together if he believed what they'd said about Max and Ursula. But I didn't ask him, and what's said is said. Zan and Kate's words were like pebbles thrown into the water, with ripples spreading out and out. It kept niggling at the back of my mind. I didn't want to think about sex. The male population of Cowpertown High was still in intellectual nursery school. Rennie didn't want me to be anything but a kid sister to him. Who else was there? Friday night, I couldn't sleep. Finally, I got up and went into the kitchen to make myself something warm to drink. We'd put away the winter blankets, and the night was cool. Mother was already there in her nightgown, waiting for the kettle to boil. "I'm making herb tea," she said. "Want some?" "I'd love some," I said, "as long as it's not chamomile." "I don't like chamomile either, unless I have a very queasy stomach." "My stomach's queasy," I said, "but I still don't want chamomile." "Why is your stomach queasy, honey?" What Zan said. What Zan said? Zan says a lot. Zan and Kate, about Max and Ursula. Mother got 2 cups from the kitchen dresser and fixed our tea. "I hope Daddy'd relieved your mind about that. It keeps coming back." She handed me a steaming cup, and we sat at the kitchen table. The windows were partly open, and the steady murmur of the ocean came in, and the wind moved through the palmettos, rattling them like paper. Mother slid one of the windows closed. Zan and Kate are both 14. At that age, children tend to have a high interest in sexual activity because they're just discovering themselves as sexual human beings. Their interests do widen after a while, as yours have. When I was 14, I hardly knew lesbianism existed, and I wasn't particularly interested. You and Zan are very different people. You and Kate, too. For one thing, if you'd heard upsetting gossip at school, you'd have come to your father or me privately. You wouldn't have brought it up in dinner table conversation. Zan thinks anything's okay for dinner table conversation. That's partly all our fault. We encourage you to talk about what's on your minds. You've always been interested in an unusually wide variety of topics. What do you and Max talk about? Philosophy, anthropology. Lately she's been on a binge of reading pre-Platonic philosophers. Pre-Platonic philosophers. She says they were the precursors of physicists who study quantum mechanics. Shouldn't that tell you something? Tell me what? Where your interests lie and Max's? I couldn't hold the question back any longer. Mother, do you think Max is a lesbian? Mother sighed and sipped her tea. Outside, a bird sang a brief candeza and was silent. The point I thought I was making is that what's important to you about Max is her interest in ideas. She's someone who appreciates and encourages the ideas you have. You might not have tried out for Celia if it weren't for Max. I couldn't leave it alone. Maybe I'm more like Zan than I realized. But if she is a lesbian, wouldn't that worry you and Dad? I mean, that I'm over at Beaulaire so often. Mother sighed again. She looked tired. Daddy had been off to Tallahassee with Ursula. Mother had stayed home with us kids. Daddy had been promising her a few nights in Charleston to go to the Dock Street Theater, to the Spoleto Festival. But there hadn't seemed to be time or money. Charleston may not be New York, but theater tickets aren't cheap anywhere. The neurosurgeon Denny's had introduced Ursula to, who also knew Daddy, had offered his guest house, which put it in the realm of possibility. It just hadn't happened. Daddy traveled around to medical meetings and Mother stayed home. "Polly," she said, "there are a great many areas in which Daddy and I simply have to trust you kids. We have to trust that how Charles lives his life, while he's in Boston, is consistent with the values we've tried to instill in all of you, just as Denny's and Lucy have to trust Kate while she's with us. When Kate and Zan and you go to a school dance, we have to trust you not to give in to peer pressure and experiment with alcohol or the drugs you know to be harmful and addictive. We've been grateful and perhaps a little relieved when Kate has called us to come get her rather than drive home with someone who's been drinking. And I suspect Denny's and Lucy feel the responsibility for Charles as strongly as we do for Kate. Kate's got good sense, and so do you. That's why we trust you and trust Max and Ursula not to do or say anything that would harm you. Has our trust been justified?" "Yes," I nodded agreement. This was how Mother and Daddy thought. This was how they behaved. If they were pulling you away from other people, then we'd think that was not a good influence. But you've been happier in school, haven't you? Yes. You've been asked to be in the chorus, haven't you? Yes. I did not tell her that the teacher who taught chorus went into ecstasies because she said I had the pure voice of a boy soprano. You're getting more phone calls from your classmates. Things are generally easy for you. Yes, I'd hardly realized it consciously. But it was true, except for those snobs from Mulletville. Mother continued, trusting people is risky, Polly. We are aware of that. Trust gets broken, but when I think of Max and Ursula, I don't feel particularly curious about their sex lives one way or another. They're opening a world of ideas to you. Ideas you're not likely to bump into at Cowpertown High. I'm sorrier than I can say that there's been ugly gossip from the Mulletville girls, and that gossip has touched you. You're young to bump into that kind of gratuitous viciousness, but it hits us all sooner or later. I've had to sit out a good bit of gossip about your father and female colleagues. But it wasn't true. No, it wasn't true, Polly. That's the point I'm making. If you can try to forget Zan and Kate's 14-year-old gossip, if you can, try to forget Zan and Kate's 14-year-old gossip. Now I sighed. I'll try, but I wish they'd kept their big mouths shut. So do I, Polly. So do I. And we will pause there.